Year alone, I've taken over 1,000 sales meetings and closed 600K. And the thing is, after going back and analyzing all my sales calls, I realized there's only 5 main objections you ever come up against. And what separates the top 20% of closers to the bottom 80% is their ability to overcome these objections and keep themselves within the sale. All you need to do is you need to analyze which objection you're up against. Is it time? Is it money? Is it decision maker? Is it stalling? Or is it preference? Once you know, it will no longer feel like a wall of objections you're up against. Instead, it will feel like doors. And in today's video, I want to give you the keys so you can walk through those doors as effortlessly as possible and make sure you are in that top 20% of closers. The first thing I wanted to run through, because I didn't know this until someone told me, is what an objection actually is. An objection is when the prospect does anything but buy. That's it. That's all it is. And once you understand that, you can start labeling objections. Because in the moment when I was first starting out, I get an objection and I wouldn't label it, I wouldn't think about it. I just kind of like word vomit. I just kind of say what came to my head in that moment. What you need to do is you need to label it and then index what you remember as the objection overcome. That's what you should be doing. So the first objection that you may come up against is time. So time is when the prospect claims they lack time to get value from your solution. The reframe, which works for this, is it's never really about the time. So they might say things like, I have no time right now, I'm too busy, this isn't a good time for me, I'm swamped at work, I have too much on my plate already. What they're actually saying is that your product or solution isn't high enough on their priority list. Because if it was, and they really wanted to solve the problem that they have, they would go for it. So you have to kind of reposition it so that it's higher value on that priority list that they have. And the way that I do this is I identify the lower value activities they spend time on. Hey, I saw that you're already spending 2 hours on YouTube, for example. Would you say that's a productive use of your time? I would say it's productive use of your time. Okay, well, what if you dedicated that to a program which is actually going to make you more money? Would you say that's more productive? Yes, it would be. Okay, cool. How about we get started then? And then you're back in the sale. That's an example. The other thing is get agreement that those less valuable things that they're spending their time on is not as valuable as solving their problem. So it's about giving them these weight scales and going, actually, it's more valuable and it's more of a priority to solve your problem, not do these other things that you claim are on your high priority list. And one of the best things is, you know, when someone says, okay, I want to, I don't know, get fit in the gym, as an example. There are so many steps that go into becoming fit at the gym. You've got to show up on time. You've got to have the right form. You've got to work out for enough time. You've got to know what exercise you're doing. You want to know what muscle group you're targeting on that day. There are all these incremental steps that go into getting fit. It's the same with the sale. So you have to show them, especially with the time, how small, consistent time investments yield bigger returns. The best thing is you could just say, look, usually we recommend about 5 hours a week for this. That's pretty much an hour a day. Do you reckon you could do an hour a day? Okay, I reckon I can do an hour a day. Okay, cool. Let's get started with that then. Just giving those incremental steps that they can walk through to get past the time objection so they actually want your solution. The next one is money. You would have heard this one because it comes up 50% of the time. They might say things like, this isn't worth it, I can't afford it, this is too expensive, my budget won't allow it, I need to see if I can allocate the funds. That's always a classic one. What they are really saying is that the cost of the investment doesn't outweigh the problem that they have. And so your whole main objective is to flip those scales. You've got to show that the problem that they are having is more of a cost than the price that they are paying. And the best reframe that I've seen is, say someone paid you 10K, but you made them 100K through your product or solution. That's an investment worth making. However, upfront, 10K sounds like a lot. When you actually show that the cost of not solving their problem, or that actually the return that they will get from your product is worth it, that's a way of overcoming the objection. So show the cost of their problem versus the investment in the solution, and reframe the expense as saving time, avoiding mistakes, unlocking greater returns. That is how you overcome the money objection. And I'll give you specific examples a bit later. The next one is decision maker. Things like, I need to talk to my wife, I need to talk to my partner, I need to talk to my business partner, we make decisions together, I need to run this by my team. All of these things are decision maker. And the best way that I've seen to overcome this objection is actually in the preparation prior to the call or prior to the chat that you have with them. Ask them in that moment, hey, is there anyone else who needs to be included on this call who needs to help with the decision? Oh, actually, yeah, I need my business partner. Cool. I'll shoot them through an invitation. Can you send me his email so I can send it across? Then they're on the call. That's actually the best way to overcome this objection. However, if you're in the meeting, that hadn't happened, and they say, hey, I need to talk to this person, on the call with them, ask if the approval is actually necessary. Because if it's necessary, then they'll be like, you know what, they really do need to know about this. And if they say, yes, it is absolutely necessary to have that individual in the actual sales process and making the decision, then use a framework called bound found, which is book a meeting from a meeting. In that moment, say, okay, that makes complete sense. I appreciate you need to talk to your wife because this is a big investment and you want to make sure that it's good for you and it's a good fit. How about we lock in a time for a bit later today, maybe in like 4 or 5 hours or so, and then we can hop on again after you had a time to talk to her. How does that sound? Sounds good. Cool. I'll book it in now, send them across an invitation. The other thing is, and again, I'm yet to use this in a real world situation, but one that I've learned about very recently is you can say, okay, well, say they say, I have to go talk to my wife. Say, okay, well, you're only going to have 2 conversations with your wife. You're either going to say, hey, there's this thing which is going to be solving this problem that we've had for the last 6 months. Do you think I should go for it? Or, hey, I've already solved the problem we've been having for the last 6 months, and I've already paid an investment towards it, and it's already paying big returns. Which conversation would you rather have? And then like, well, I'd rather have number 2. Okay, well then let's get started with that then. That's another reframe that I'm going to try and use this week, but I've learned does work, and especially from talking to other closers. So that is a nice one and a nice way to reframe it. Number 4 is preference. So this is when they might say things like, I don't like a specific thing about the product. This isn't what I had in mind. I was looking for something different. I prefer another approach. It's a tricky one because this kind of comes back to how you presented the offer itself, but there are ways to overcome it. So remind them of the problem that they want to solve and see how there's a pattern here. You're constantly referring back to the problem that they have, because if that problem or that need they have is strong enough, it will overcome any objection that you are up against. That's truth. The other thing is draw out the short, medium, and long-term consequences of their current approach. Okay, so what happens if you don't solve this in 6 months? Well, this will happen. Okay, what if you don't solve this in 12 months? Okay, well, this will happen. What if you don't solve this in a couple of years? Okay, well, then we might not make as much revenue, we won't grow as much. Okay, so in most cases, they actually like 80% of the product that you're selling. There's just this little 20% that are like, this doesn't really fit my identity or fits my needs, okay? You just have to remind them that there is 80% which does. Reframe how your method ultimately serves them in the best interest possible. Show them the problem, show them that the product or solution solves that problem, and then it will do it as fast as possible. And this comes back to the value equation if you've ever seen it, but you want to reduce the effort and sacrifice and time delay to the result that they want to get. The last one that you'll come up against is stalling. So the prospect delays saying they need more time before deciding. So this could be things like, let me sleep on it. I need to think about it. I want to consider all my options. I need to process this information. The overcome for a stalling is walk them through a decision-making framework. So explain the cost of waiting. Hey, and this also does link to the time one, but hey, what happens if you don't do this now? Well, if you don't do this now, let's solve this problem for a bit longer, and then this XYZ happens. Really get them to just sit in what I like to call a pain cycle. So just keep reminding them of the problem they have. And this was typically done in the discovery, but just repeat the cycle that they're in. Okay, well, you're in this pain right now, and you're gonna remain in that cycle if you don't solve it right. Again, remind them of the pain they will continue with if they delay. Just keep reminding them and keep pushing them through a pain cycle. Like, hey, you have this problem, you haven't solved it yet. What does that mean for you? Oh, well, I haven't scaled and I can't do this, I can't do that. I did a video on how to do the exact closing tactics. Refer to that to see what a pain cycle is and how you just push people through it, because that comes into the objection handling as well. And by the way, if you want all these scripts that I use to open a conversation, qualify the individual, close them, they are all below in the Qualified Call Booster Kit, which doubles your qualified calls in 48 hours. And I've put everything that I talked through in these videos in that. So go opt in for that. And my recommendation, get a notebook next to you, write out some of the objection overcomes or write out some of the kind of qualifying sequence. And then in the moment, you can just use it and you can just refer to your note. And my best tactic that I use a lot is if I'm on a call with someone, I want to prove that I'm actually listening. So what I'll do is I'll pull out my pen and I'll show it to the camera, and then I'll write something down. And that's just a little subtlety to show that you are actually listening. And it also gives you the ability to look at your notes and see what to say next, what to ask next, what to do next in the closing. Just buys you that extra time. There is a wrong way and there is a right way of handling objections. And if you get this bit wrong, you're not going to overcome it. What a lot of closers do, and this is the bottom 80% of closers, is they kind of call out the objection and catch them in a lie. So an example, which I saw written down, was someone went up to the door and they were door to door salesman, and they opened the door, they kind of showed their product solution, and then the guy went, look, I don't have the money for this. I don't want to do this right now. And the guy went, well, I saw you have an Aston Martin parked in the driveway, so actually it's not about the money, is it? And then, of course, you do not want to do that, because then the prospect feels embarrassed. They're like, oh, okay, they caught me in the lie. And what, in this dream fantasy world, closers think will happen is they go, oh, you know what? You're right. I'm lying. I have an Aston Martin. I can afford for this product. Here's my money. That's not what happens. Instead, they're embarrassed, you make them angry, and it's just not a pathway that you really want to go down. The right way is to always agree with the objection. So maintain agreement, respect their reasoning, and use looping, which is what I'm getting onto now, to redirect them back to the offer that you're selling. So looping, and this might be something you've come across before, is basically just a framework where you just overcome an objection, overcome the objection, overcome the objection. And what this is you acknowledge the objection. So you go, that makes complete sense, super reasonable, or I agree. You then address it. And so you say, so it sounds to me like you're thinking this, this, and that. And then you ask for the sale again. So an example of a loop is, and we'll focus on the time objection to begin with, is the prospect says, this isn't a good time. And you say, look, that makes complete sense. What if we structure this so it only took 30 minutes a day? Would that work for you? And they'd be like, yeah, that would work. And we're like, great, let's get started with that then. So you see how I acknowledged the objection, that makes sense. I addressed it, what if we did this? And then I asked for the sale again. Acknowledge, address, ask. That is the framework of looping. Another example is the money objection. So, hey, this is too expensive. Okay, and be like, okay, that's super reasonable. If working with us saves you a year of trial and error, would that be worth it? Yeah, that would be worth it. Okay, perfect, let's get started then. Back into the sale. The closer who asks for the sale the most times is the most likely to close the sale. And the thing is, most closers ask for it once and they never ask for it again because it feels itchy, it feels a bit awkward. Get over that. Keep asking for the sale until it happens. The next one is the kind of decision-making objection. This is how you loop it. So I need to ask my wife, be like, that makes sense. What if we include her in the onboarding call so she's actually fully informed? Like, yeah, that would work. Okay, excellent. Let's get set up then. See how it's acknowledge, address, ask. And the thing is, they'll run out of objections before you run out of loops. That's the beauty of it. So you just got to make sure you just keep looping and you keep doing this framework. This is something that most closers don't do. And it actually kills any objection handling that they do after. What this is isolating the real objection. You've got to make sure that they actually see your product as valuable. So before you even get into objection handling, when that first one comes up against you, whether it's time, money, decision maker stalling, or preference, analyze if they see your product or solution as valuable. Do you think this service could help you get closer to your goals? Ask them that. What's the biggest thing holding you back? Tell me your main concern. Identify if they see your product or solution as valuable. If they do, then you can go into the objection handling because they see the value. Because the worst thing is when you get into objection handling and then you realize, oh my God, they don't actually see my solution as valuable. And then you're screwed. And then you want to close the sale. Make sure they see the value in your product. If you need a moment to think in the sale, because I appreciate in the moment, there's a lot going on. You're thinking, you're processing what they're saying. You're trying to think of your next step. Give yourself some time to think about what to say next and make sure it's calculated. The way that you buy time is while they're talking, just say, oh, can you give me an example of that? Or can you tell me more about that? What did you mean by X, Y, Z? Just buy yourself time. They'll be like, well, an example of this would be, and while they're giving you the example, think about the next response. Calculate it. Think what objection have you come up against, label it, and then think of the overcome. And again, use looping. Acknowledge, address, ask. What's interesting is the psychology of humans never changes. It really doesn't. It's been the same throughout the last 100 years, and you just got to buy into that psychology. Someone is way more likely to go along with you and more likely to close if you agree with their objection. It's very powerful. So what most users do is goes, look, I hear you, but, and then they go into, but we have all these other products, or we have all these other benefits that you might like. Do not use the word but. That already signals to your brain, okay, switch off whatever they say after but. It's like, this is, or you can also use this if you're ever in an argument as well. But the reframe and the best way to overcome is just agree with them. I agree, and that makes sense, and super reasonable, and that connector of using and instead of but will increase the likelihood of closing that sale by a lot more, because you're agreeing with them. And they're like, oh, this guy actually listened to me, and they're agreeing with me. And then you give them the objection. So always agree. And then an example could be, I agree. And I think that's the exact reason that this actually makes sense for you. You said that you wanted X, Y, Z. We have that, and we can solve that immediately. And all you need to do is you just need to get started. And I'll make sure in the onboarding, I'll mention that's something you have. We can get started with that. How does that sound? Sounds good. Cool. Let's get started. Or super fair, and that's why most people actually get started anyway. Or that's a great point. If we look at it like this, does that clear things up? These are examples of agreeing and then going into the objection handle. This is just something that I wanted to add on at the end, and this is like an extra little bonus thing. And if you've watched any of Alex Mosey's videos, you may have seen this, but if you ever come against a prospect who's stalling, you can use the 1 to 10 close. And so an example of how this works is, hey, can I ask you a question? Like, yeah. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you hate me, you never want to see me again, and 10 being you're ready to get started, you really want to get started, where are we right now? And they might say, okay, I'm a 6. And then you say, okay, well, why not a 1? And then they give you all the reasons that they're not a 1, all the benefits, all the kind of features that they want, and what the outcome that they want. Okay. And then you go, why not a 10? And they actually give you the real objection, or they mention something that you actually forgot to say, and you're like, oh, well, sorry, we have that. You ready to get started now? Cool. Or you feeling tennis now? Cool, let's get started. This is a very nice reframe and a very nice technique that you can use to extract the real objection. Patience is one of the biggest and best techniques that a closer can get. Be patient. And one of the things that I do looking back at my sales calls is looking at the gaps between when they finished talking and when I started talking. You want to show that you're actually processing it. Some closers have this thing where they're like word vomit. So the prospect finishes their sentence or explaining something, and they immediately say, oh, yeah, and then they go into it. Just pause, wait. Show that you listen, show that you're kind of taking in the information, and then output a calculated response. And another example of this is when asking for the sale, wait 8 seconds after. I think it's something like 40% higher likelihood of closing the sale if you just wait 8 seconds. Hey, are you ready to get started? And then you wait for them to say something, because this is the interesting thing. You want the prospect to convince themselves. And so in those 8 seconds that you're silent, they'll kind of start convincing themselves and like, actually, you know, I should do this. Plus, when I'm looking back at my sales calls, if I talked more than the prospect, then I knew why I lost the sale. The closers whose calls have the prospect speaking the most, close the most. Because you want them to convince themselves. The most powerful voice that you have is your own, not somebody else's. So you have to just remain as silent as possible throughout the sale so that you close it. And a way that I've kind of overcome this happening is just ask another question. What kind of things do you guys do? And then I might be like, well, what are you looking for? Or what's the main offer that you guys are giving right now? Well, what are you actually looking for? And then you immediately, they question you, you question them. And that keeps them talking. And it keeps them convincing themselves that they need what you sell. So looking back at sales calls, I realized that I do little subtleties, and so do other closers that I watch, that they don't ever really mention when they're trying to explain something to you. So the little subtleties, I've kind of broken down into 8 points. Number 1, if you're looping a lot, you probably messed up earlier in the script. That's a fact. Because the thing is, if you're having to loop more than 5 times, then either they don't see the value, or you messed up earlier in the discovery and you realize that they don't actually need your solution. That's one thing. Number 2, most closes happen on the first or second ask, not the 5th. So you need to make sure that you are asking the sale as many times as possible. That 5th number, I know people have heard this before, that's actually when people reply after following up. If you follow up 5 times, they're more likely to reply on the 5th. In the sale, you want them to close on the first or second ask, because then you've done your job properly, and the discovery, the closing, and the actual presentation of the offer all went well. So you should be able to close it on the first or second ask. Number 3 is tone matters a lot. This could be your speed, your volume, pauses, pitch, anything like this. It matters a lot. Like if I slow down and I pause and I really draw attention to what I'm saying, and I might get quieter, or I might get really, really loud, that draws attention to certain points. So you've got to use that to your advantage. Focus on your tonality throughout the sale. The best way, and I know people don't like to do this, but the best way is just watch back your sales calls. Listen to yourself. Do you sound convincing? Number 5 is, like I mentioned earlier, they will eventually run out of objections. You'll never run out of loops. Just keep hitting them with the loop. Acknowledge, address, ask. Just keep going. Again, like I mentioned earlier, use BAM. If you're running out of time, if they've got to run to a meeting, or you're in the middle of objections and they need to hop off, book another meeting, preferably on the same day, because you want to keep them on the emotional high of the sale. They are at this high point where like, hey, I'm really liking the look of this. This is brilliant. You want to keep them there. And preferably if you can put them on the same day or this first thing the next morning, you'll still catch them on that wave. You're more likely to go to sell. The longer you wait, the less likely the sale will close, the less likely you make your money. Not a good thing. Number 7 is always stay calm. Sound the same in the close as you did earlier. What happens is, in the discovery, it's more like a conversational thing because you're asking questions quite a lot. And you'll have this own tonality that you're bringing to the sale. And then what happens is when you get into like the itchy awkwardness bit of like asking for the sale, presenting the price, all these other things, the tone changes. And the thing is, instinctively and naturally, the prospect notices this, and they notice that you may be more nervous, or you've changed your approach. You don't want this to happen. You just got to stay calm and sound the same throughout the sale. And number 8, and this is probably the most valuable, role play objection handling. Whether that's with friends, whether that's with people in your company, whether that's with other closers, whatever it might be, someone that you might know, just role play it. Volume negates luck, as Alex Mosey says. So you've just got to keep going, keep role playing until it becomes so natural to overcome those objections that it doesn't matter if a prospect hits you with one, because you just go, cool, had this before, sidestep, back into the sale. And the best analogy that I've seen is you want to imagine a sale that's like train tracks, and you're just keeping the prospect within these guardrails, because you can kind of change direction a little bit, but ultimately you're keeping them within the guardrails. You're keeping them within the sale. That's what you've got to do. The bottom line is objections are inevitable, predictable, and solvable. There are only 5 real objections, as I've gone through today: time, money, decision maker, preference, or stalling. And the universal method is looping. Acknowledge, address, and ask for the sale again. And the closer who asks for the sale the most times gets the most wins and makes the most money. Make sure it's you who's doing that. Again, if you want all of these scripts, all of these analogies, all of these frameworks that I'm running through, I put the Qualified Call Booster Kit below in the description. Just opt in for it. It's simple. It will be sent straight to your email, and you can start going through it and start using the scripts. And that is all the way from opening the conversation with a prospect to closing them, getting them on the meeting and closing them. Make sure you go through it and make sure you're applying the techniques as best you can. That is how to overcome objections. If you listen to this properly and you use those objections and you use looping, you will overcome them and the sale will become easy. I'll see you in the next video.